Sorry, boss, I don't speak Spanish. I work at a hotel as a night auditor, and this malicious compliance begins with a small bit of information I was told when I was initially hired for this position. When I interviewed for the position, and this is very important later on, I was told by the HR lady that the hotel paid a bonus, $100, for each foreign language I spoke well enough to serve our guests. Management cleared my $100 for speaking English after I passed through their evaluation period. My main language is Portuguese. At first, I was glad to be working in the night shift, mostly because my colleague then, Mr. Castillo, was from Guatemala. So whenever any guests that spoke Spanish showed up, he handled it, and in turn, I handled any English-speaking foreigners. Naturally, he did a lot more work since the amount of Spanish-speaking guests we receive is significantly larger than our English-speaking ones. Meanwhile, Mr. Castillo was in the process of learning English, and I had taken an interest in Spanish, so we helped each other out. Not long after, Mr. Castillo got himself a job paying several times over what the hotel did, and sadly, left me. My new colleague, a newly promoted bellboy, didn't speak English, though he could understand some, and didn't speak Spanish at all. In fact, he didn't even try to improve any of his language skills, while I slowly kept improving my Spanish, trying to use more and more of it every day to serve our dear guests. As of the start of this month, I spoke to our front desk manager and asked him in plain Spanish, what did I have to do exactly to receive the $100 bonus for speaking Spanish? He was surprised, but said nothing more since the front desk got busy with checkouts and my shift was up. But a few days later, he mentioned he spoke to HR and informed them I was speaking Spanish well enough to receive my bonus. And now, he was just waiting to hear back from them. A few days later, the HR lady asked me what size shirt I wore since they were going to be ordering new uniforms in the coming weeks, and took the opportunity to ask her about my bonus for Spanish, and she mentioned they were talking with our director about it. A day later, she informed me they wouldn't be paying me the bonus for a foreign language, since it was on file that I was already receiving it. I replied, I was receiving a bonus for English, not Spanish, and she said she would speak to the director again, and within a few days, all would be made well. Now I'm not really in a hurry to get my bonus, but it would be nice if they had cleared it already, as it would show up in my next paycheck. But guess what? They didn't. Our director talked to HR again, and my boss, and told them that even though I am serving our dear Spanish-speaking guests in Spanish, I don't in fact speak Spanish. I'm far from fluent, but I can explain how the hotel works, direct guests to where they need to be, and assist them with what they need, be it finding a pharmacy at 3 a.m., getting a cab to go out and get drinks, or even hire an escort. Yep, but apparently it isn't good enough for our director, and my manager said he can't really afford to fight him on it. Okay, no biggie I guess. Maybe we'll try again next year when I can speak a little better, I thought. However, the cruel and unforgiving gods of the hotel industry gave me the perfect opportunity to strike back. Earlier last week, we received a large group of 30-plus Spanish-speaking tourists, which in addition to our normal occupancy, meant we were effectively sold out for the week. Big groups are usually a minor inconvenience when you're checking them in, but an even bigger problem when checking them out, especially if they're one person per room, which means you basically have a huge load of rooms to check out, one by one, while an endless line forms in front of the front desk. 80-plus checkouts aren't unusual for our hotel on Friday mornings, but 110-plus is a problem. Normally, when the morning shift has a workload this big, our front desk manager comes in early to help, but he couldn't this time since he took a personal day since his mother fell ill. That left our director with only one choice, to ask the night audit to stay late and help until our reservations people clocked in and could then replace us at the front desk. See, my colleague doesn't like staying late, especially since he works at a second job with his father in the afternoon, meaning he only has the morning and early afternoon to sleep. I don't like staying late on Fridays because of the amount of checkouts, which means it'll be forever before you can take a breath, and even more so before you can leave. However, this time our director didn't even ask my colleague, and instead told me to stay late, because we would have a sizable workload, and about a third of it would require someone that spoke Spanish, or it would slow down everything to a crawl. I told him I would not be staying late that morning, and before I could get another word him, he started yammering about how I'm wrong, and I should be more of a team player, and he would be very grateful for it. Wanting to get back to my sleep, I told him to ask my colleague and he said he couldn't. that they needed me, and when I asked him why, he clearly stated, "We need 2 Spanish speakers that morning to make sure everything goes okay with the checkouts." Not one for missing an opportunity to get payback, I replied, "Sorry boss, I don't speak Spanish," turned off my phone, and went back to sleep. Update. Sorry for holding out on the aftermath. I wrote this during my shift, and as I was putting on the finishing touches, we had a server crash, and I spent the next hour and a half trying to restore our backups and get the camera system up again. Update. Aftermath. After I woke up and turned my cell phone back on, I had several missing calls from the hotel and 2 missing calls from our front desk manager. Good guy. I called back the hotel, but the afternoon shift picked up and they didn't know anything, so I called my manager's phone. He answered and asked me what was going on because the director was furious about me hanging up on him and that I was refusing to work. I explained to him the situation in regards to my bonus for speaking Spanish, and since the hotel was trying to hold out on me, I was going to withhold performance. Anyone who's ever worked costumer service know how much damage withholding performance can do, even if it just a little. In the end, my manager begged me to stay until our reservations people came in at 8 a.m. My shift ends at 7:20 a.m. I agreed on the condition that I would not check out anyone who spoke Spanish. He reluctantly acceded and said he would back me up in the following shitstorm that would happen. What happened was that the group came down for breakfast precisely at 6:40 a.m., finished at 7:10 a.m. give or take, and went back to their room to collect their belongings. At this time, the 2 front desk attendants of the morning shift had arrived, as well as our bellboy. Plus, there was me and my colleague waiting to punch out and go. We had already started checking people out, and this day was particularly busy. We had 3 or 4 people waiting to be checked out, and it doesn't help that we only have 3 computers for 4 people to work with another computer for us to check the cameras. When 7:20 a.m. came up, my colleague quickly picked up his things and left, and I took over his spot. At this time, the first few people in the group started coming down, and they already had to wait since we were all checking out other people. A few minutes later, I got the first one, but I told them I couldn't check them out since I don't speak Spanish, and asked them to wait for my colleagues to become available. In the end, I ended up refusing service to 10 or so people, which started forming a line right in front of the front desk, which only grew since other guests assumed they were all in line to be checked out. My colleagues on the morning shift were not happy at all. The guests were less than satisfied, and when the first of our reservations people showed up at 8 a.m., I logged out, punched out, and went home. By that time, there was a 20-plus line of people waiting to be checked out by 2 overworked receptionists, only one of which spoke Spanish. In the ensuing shitstorm that happened, the hotel's director arrived at 8:30 a.m. in an attempt to minimize the anger of the human centipede who formed in the front desk, chatted with the guests, and otherwise trying to distract them so they would be less angry and avoid giving the hotel a poor review. I got a mild chewing out by my manager for poor work ethic instead of being written up. True to his word, he backed me up when the director called him and HR for a meeting regarding my actions. You can't demand someone speak a language that you know they don't, right? I still haven't got my bonus for speaking Spanish, and I let my manager know that I will not be speaking any Spanish while on the job until they give in and give me my hard-earned bonus. Update 2, TLDR. Management denies my bonus for speaking Spanish. Demands stay. I late to help check out Spanish-speaking guests. I agree, but refuse to speak Spanish since management themselves said I don't speak Spanish so they wouldn't have to pay me a bonus for speaking Spanish. I refuse service to lots of guests. Chaos ensues in the front desk. I clock out before the hotel implodes. Update 3. So due to the number of comments asking about how the bonus works, I'll just post it here. It is a monthly bonus, and the way to hotel pays it out is by adding it into the base salary, instead of specifically outlining it on a separate item on our pay stub. This means that it is straight up a pay raise, and as such, it interacts with other things that go into our paycheck that use our base salary to be calculated. This means that the $100 bonus easily snowballs into being $150, $160 when you take into account the plus 20% we get paid for working nights, plus 10% for handling live money, plus overtime, plus paid time off, plus vacations.